given all the Zoom stuff, to try to find anybody else that even comes close to thinking like me. And I was talking to a guy named David Peton, I think it was David Petoniak, that sort of mentioned Ed Cohle in Pennsylvania. And it turns out that Ed and I share one of the things in common with us is that we both knew Herb Lovett, who inspired me a great deal in all the sort of work that I've done since then, actually. So that was kind of exciting. And then I found out he's also a fellow drummer. So actually, he's going to play the drums for you tonight. No, I'm just kidding. So, I think, I've only talked to Ed like maybe 2 or 3 times now on Zoom, but some of his thinking just really, I thought was very inspired. And so in the work that he's done with people that have, challenging reputations or whatever. So I think I'll leave it at that. And I'm kind of interested to hear what he's got to say about all this myself. So yeah. Thank you, Ed, for coming.
Oh, thank you for that nice introduction. I'm interested too to hear what I'm going to be saying. I don't have a canned presentation, and I just threw together some ideas just for you guys. So it's going to be some stories and also some PowerPoint, and it'll be the first time I'm seeing the PowerPoint along with you, because I just made it and have never used it and didn't even run through it. I just kind of put it together as I was kind of planning things. Sometimes there are weird connections. Thank you to the 2 people who honored their in ancestral lands. I will honor my ancestral land of the Lenape tribe. And it just so happens that my church, which isn't run by a minister, there is a minister, but it's really run by a board of the congregation, decided last night that we would do a once-a-year payment to the tribe as reparations, which I thought was pretty cool, pretty neat stuff. And our minister was very quick to say, it's not a donation, it's reparations. So that's what we're trying to do from our end to honor the people who owned the land before we were ever here. All right, so I'm gonna hopefully get my presentation working. See what we do here, and good. I can still see you guys, and you can see this. So what I thought I'd do is, I've been doing this kind of work for a long time. Back in the mid 70s, when I was in just about to go to graduate school, I just graduated with my 4-year degree. I got a job working in a home with 6 men, all who had intellectual disabilities, and then there were 3 staff that lived there. And it was pretty progressive. It was based on the ideas of Wolf Wolfensberger, who I later got to know and actually did some work for. But it was really a different kind of experience for me, because I didn't really have a relative with a disability. So it brought me into contact with people that I really had never really come in contact with before. And this particular program, you were a live-in, so I lived there and had to work 5 days a week, and I was off too. But that was my primary residence, so I could bring in, friends if I wanted. I could just sit and chill out, watch TV, do whatever I wanted. And then the other 2 staff would pick up on the days that I was off, and vice versa. And the other cool thing about this is that we didn't have like staff quarters or anything. One of the residents there was my roommate. We shared rooms. And so a very different kind of beginning for me than a lot of the people that I later worked with. Didn't have that experience. So immediately I had that kind of, personal experience of what this person's all about. And remember my friend Denny getting mad. He was one of the other staff there, and he got mad at his roommate because Denny had this beautiful turntable, and his roommate would use it and invariably would do something and scratch Denny's records. So, we had to figure out how to negotiate all that. So it was a very interesting beginning for me. And so I started learning lots of things. And in the early days, I really learned a kind of a more natural way to be with people. But as I got into this more as a profession, that was kind of beaten out of me or trained out of me. And I was trained in something completely different and completely foreign. So I decided to call today The Ordinary Can Be Healing, because I was never taught that. I was taught lots of other stuff. Oh gosh, wait, hold on. I can't, let me try to move some things around here so I can see on my screen. So sometimes I was taught in training, sometimes just by observing what my coworkers did or what they told me to do. And that's how I learned how to do things, initially. The trainings that I had initially were all in what was called normalization and is now social role valorization. Not sure who all is into that. I know people in Australia definitely, at least at one point, were very interested in those ideas. And without getting into all that, of course, it was more of a philosophy we learned. We weren't worried about rules and regulations and paperwork and all that. We had this philosophy on how to be with people, community, how to help people into adulthood, because those are the people that we worked with. So as time went on, though, my training changed because I left that, finished grad school, and then started on a whole different thing. Worked as an administrator of a group home program where I continued to try to do this stuff, and then became a behavior specialist, and started getting trainings, and just throughout that whole time, coming into contact with people who were teaching me some things that I later had to unteach myself. And one of the things I learned is that that the work that I was doing, it wasn't magical. It was very ordinary, the kinds of things that I could do. The magical thinking were the people who were starting to teach me things like behavior modification, which I learned in grad school and in other places, became quite adept at it. I used reinforcement programs. I used punishment, taking privileges away, things like overcorrection, and just a bunch of nonsense that really wasn't good for people. But I didn't know that because that's what I was being taught. And I don't know about all of your experiences, but you may have also been in situations where you were taught things that just didn't seem to make sense later on. But at the moment, it was like that's what everybody was doing. And so I was never really comfortable with it, but I did as I was told. And I realized at some point I was making a mistake. And the first time I realized it, I was in charge of a group home program. I was an administrator. And there was this board member whose son was in our program. And the group homes that we ran were really apartments, and there were two people who lived in apartments, and it had staff basically anytime that they were home. And one of the board members, her son was in the program, Joe, and Joe was a real problem. He would rip his clothes off. He would bust things up in the apartment. And we really didn't know what to do. And so a consultant in the program at the time came to me as an administrator and said, I need your backing because I have this idea. Well, with behavior modification, you want to make sure that whatever the reinforcement is, that the person can't normally have access to it. Otherwise, it doesn't work. I mean, if I can have access to, if I love Snicker bars and I can get them anytime I want, why would I make a bed just to get a Snickers bar? I wouldn't. So he came up with this idea that the most important thing in this guy's life was his parents, and he visited with his parents quite often, saw his dad every Wednesday, every other weekend, went home, was very involved with his family. And so he said, well, what we're going to do is we're going to stop all visits, and he's going to have to go a certain amount of time, and he'll get stars and put them up on a chart. When he gets a certain amount of stars, he gets to visit his parents, and he's not going to have phone contact either. And my job was to talk the parents into it. It seemed like a great idea at the time because it had all the components of behavior modification, limiting access to the thing that was reinforcing, giving them access to it by doing what we wanted them to do. And it was perfect. And so I did it. I didn't think there was anything wrong with it. I talked, they weren't happy, but I talked them into it. And 2 weeks went by, it's no contact. And Joe started getting a little frazzled and punched a couple holes in the wall, which he had done before anyhow. So we thought, okay, he just needs to learn that that's not what he should be doing if he wants to see his parents. And then the apartment, the air conditioner was central air and it had gone out and needed to be fixed. And it was really hot. And Joe was an amazing person. He wasn't super verbal, but he just knew what to do. And so they were up on the 3rd floor. And so one night he took the fan in his room, box fan, and he held it out the window and he threw it out the window. So it busted. Now they're dying up there with the heat. And he started punching more holes in the wall and he was getting worse and worse. And of course, the consultant told me, Ed, it always gets worse before it gets better. That's just the natural kind of way behavior goes. You do stuff, it's going to get worse, and then it's going to get better. It didn't get better. And we did about a month of that and ended up having to say, this isn't working, and parents, do your visits again, and life went on. But a light bulb came off in my head, and I thought, this is a crazy way to support people. Taking the one thing that was important to him in life, or the most important thing in life, we took that away from him and we expected that he was going to get better, whatever better meant, but he was going to stop having problems, stop challenging us, and stop throwing things out the window. It was ludicrous, but we all bought into it. The whole team bought into it. And I will say that later, when I came to my senses, I apologized to the parents for even doing that and apologized and said, I just don't think that this kind of method is going to be good for him. And indeed it wasn't. And so that sort of got me a little bit on my thinking about how else we could do things. And let's see here. So making mistakes, I figured, was okay. There's a little cartoon here. So as we're growing, and that's for everybody, whether I'm providing service or the people I'm trying to support, we're all going to make mistakes. And sometimes the first time we try stuff, it's not really coming out so well. The next time this guy tries the wheel, maybe it'll be a little more round. Maybe not. Maybe let's try triangle first, or an octagon or something like that. But we all make mistakes. And so one of the lessons I learned that's important, that failure and mistakes are a way to start learning. We can learn from it. And so that my challenge started to be, what will I learn from my mistakes? And how can I get the people that I'm supporting to learn from their mistakes? And realizing that the people that I'm supporting, many of whom have severe mental illness, most of them also have intellectual disabilities, may not figure that out right away. And then they may need my support, and it may take a much longer time, to figure out, well, what's a better way? What's a different way of doing things? But that was starting to get to be important lessons for me, to realize that, mistakes happen. And also, when we do these crazy things, you have to forgive yourself. Sometimes I didn't know any better, so I just went along with it. And you can't beat yourself up. Of course, that happened 40 years ago, and here I am still talking about it. So maybe I am still beating myself up, but really, we don't want to beat ourselves up about that. So I've learned so much from my mistakes. I'm thinking of making a few more. That's my new motto. Because then I'll learn, because that's how I learn, from kind of goofing up. So behavior modification. I'll tell you a quick story. Well, it's maybe not so quick, about this guy, Bill, that I work with. And Bill was somebody who was literally chained to a bed or cuffed to a bed, 4-point restraints for days on end and sometimes for weeks. Just let him up a little bit, put him back in. And his father, he lived in one of our state centers or state hospital. And his father got wind and figured this out and was able to visit him and sneak in a guy from a local TV station. Guy came in, filmed it, they got information, and there was a big investigation. And this guy, he was extremely, extremely violent, but it didn't really help for him to be, put in 4-point restraint. So big court case. He was awarded $1 million in suffering, pain, and damages. And it was ordered that he needed to go into the community and into a program, and that the cost didn't matter. The state had to pay whatever the cost was. This was a long time ago. The cost was pretty hefty. So this would have been, I've been doing this work for a long time. Somebody can do the math, but it was probably around 1992. So that was a long time ago, and the program cost $500,000 just for him. So you can figure out what that might cost for today. It was a lot of money. So what they did was they got a house, different places call it a row home. So think of a bunch of 2-story houses all kind of hooked together, almost like a townhouse. Some people would call it, we called it a row home. It was in Philadelphia. It was in the city, in West Philadelphia. And they had 5 staff on duty for 3 shifts. Every shift, there were 5 staff. And he was the only one living there. He was really, really violent. He'd put his hands through windows. He'd jump out 2nd floor windows. He pulled sinks out of the walls, tore down piping. Like when he'd go into the basement, he would just tear these pipes down from that were up in the rafters. He was a really wounded from his experiences, really wounded person, and just I must say difficult for the staff, difficult to be around. And the reason they had 5 people is because it took 4 people to hold him down when he got violent, and then the 5th person would, like, whoever got tired, they would go in and spell that person. They would say, okay, I'll relieve you. So it was a very difficult situation. So they hired a famous behaviorist to go in, got a couple $1,000s a day. Total bill way back then would have been maybe $8,000 to $10,000 for his help. And here's what he came up with. He said, here's what we're going to do. He made a list of all the reinforcements, all the preferred things. And he said, so what you're going to do is every 15 minutes that he doesn't exhibit those behaviors, you're going to give him a little check mark or, off on, or a star on this chart. I'm sure, I don't remember what they were doing. It's going to do it on probably a star chart, but at least a check thing. And when he gets a certain amount, he can choose from one of these reinforcers. He loved music, he loved certain TV shows, loved certain kinds to go out and get certain kinds of food. So that's what they got for their $8,000. That was his advice. So I came in, and by then I just knew that this was just a crock. I mean, this guy's life was not going to be better. So I had to figure out, and I got into trouble at our governmental level because I didn't follow his plan. I had to figure it out and make it look like we were doing the plan without doing the plan. And so I did that, and to be honest with you, I can't even remember exactly how I did that, but I do know that anybody looking at it thought we were doing it, but it was clear to me that we weren't doing it. I think I was starting making things not non-contingent. We were just giving him stuff, because he liked it. He liked music, and he was happy listening to music. So he had lots of different difficult behaviors, and one of them was would do projectile vomiting intentionally on people. Now, I don't know about you, but I can't think of anything worse than that. So what eventually happened is they said, this is the worst. We don't care about the violence at this point. We can't have that. They tried giving him a bucket. He would vomit into the bucket a couple times and then throw it at them when he got mad. He just did all this stuff. And so in getting to know him and his background and realizing that when he was young, his parents had divorced. It was an ugly divorce. He had been shuttled around to lots of different relatives' homes. And there were just a lot of things, going on at that time. And so I think it just weighed heavy on him. And then as he had behavioral problems, he started getting rejected in every situation, rejected through school, then residential placements, and just rejected, and he kicked out of places, and then finally ended up in a state hospital being strapped to a bed all the time, rejected by the very people, the kind of last resort is these staff that worked in this state center. They rejected him. There was nobody left to reject him. And so I came up with a theory, and it was just a theory, and I could have been wrong. I said, well, I think he needs acceptance. Let's just give him acceptance. And I said, so what we're going to do is next time he throws, and then I should mention it too, he'd throw the bucket at him or something. And then they say you have to clean it up, and then they get into a restraint because he wouldn't want to clean it up, and they try to force him to clean it up. So now it's just, piling on. I said, so what's going to happen is when he throws it at you, you're going to say to him, I don't know why you're so upset, but I realize that you're upset. And I wish you just didn't have to throw that at me, but I understand that for some reason you have a need to do that. And I'd like you to help me clean it up. And then when he says no, say, well, you deserve to live in a nice smelling place, so I'm going to clean it up for you because you deserve that. I think that's something you need. And he would just look at him because he wasn't used to this kind of stuff happening. Now, when I told the staff, by the way, that this is what they were going to do, there was like a revolt, and people were like, you can't make us do this. And they talked to the director, who said, no, let's give it a go. I told them, everybody bring an extra set of clothes because you're going to need it. And so they started doing that. And it's just one of those things that just clicked in. 2 weeks later, he stopped doing it completely. 2 weeks, no behavior modification, nothing, nothing. Just satisfying that need, giving him what he needed was just, he only wanted was some acceptance. So, all my behavioral people went nuts that I wasn't doing the plan. And this was such a nutty idea. How could it possibly work? But, I always, saw myself, I always wanted to be like a mental health therapist and all that. I was in training to be a licensed psychologist when I got on a different path. So this just felt natural. Sure, acceptance. I know Maslow's hierarchy of needs and all that. Of course, he needs this stuff. And so that really worked. And then just off of that, we started doing all kinds of things and trying to figure out what this guy needed. He loved music, and so how can we give him more music? What can we do? Forget about his behavior. I don't care. If he let him tear off the sink, and then we'll go down and listen to some music, and we'll calm down, and we'll talk about the music, and we'll do this and that. Which from a behavioral point of view should not have worked, but it did. And I would say within about 4 years, he went from 5 staff slowly down, and he ended up having a roommate and just 2 staff on duty. So him and a roommate and 2 staff. And that was in 4 years. The cost of the program dropped. One of the things that happened early on is when we first had to implement something, and before I could change it, he could get ice cream as one of his rewards. And they said, oh, what kind of ice cream do you want? And he told them what kind. He said, oh, yeah, I'm going to go get ice. He didn't tell them what kind. He just said, I'm going to go get ice cream. They took him to the store. He went in to get ice cream, and he pointed to Haagen-Dazs, which for those not from our country, is a fancy, it's made in New Jersey, but it sounds like it's from Sweden or something. Haagen-Dazs. And it's an expensive ice cream. And they looked at that and they said, get this other brand. It's like a third of the cost. And he said, no, I want the Haagen-Dazs. And they told him no. He started making a fuss. And on the way out, he put his foot through a plate glass window in the store. Police were called. was brought back home, and I said, "What flavor did you want?" And I went and bought it for him because he was told he could get whatever he wanted. And I got in real trouble from our governmental office that looks at those things, our county office. And the psychologist there was really mad. "You're reinforcing bad behavior." I said, "No, we made a mistake, and I corrected it." And it was all those kinds of things that really brought them along a little bit. And people couldn't, people can't wrap their heads around doing that kind of thing. They just isn't in their wheelhouse. So it's just a kind of it was an interesting guy to work with. And this is a very disturbing picture. By the way, those are real people. So one of the things I started early on thinking about behavior modification is it's all about manipulating and controlling other people. And that's all it's about. And it's sanctioned, and it still is. I mean, if you look at ABA is now the new behavior mod with a different name. It's better maybe than it had been, but still there's some problems with it. It's all about how can I manipulate this person and how can I control them. Now, it's kind of interesting. What I found is that the word manipulation is used by people in power to the people who are under them. So if you're an employee and you're trying to get off on Thanksgiving in our country and Christmas and New Year's, 3 holidays, people are like, "Oh, he's trying to manipulate me to get off. He's only supposed to take one of those off." But if you're the supervisor and you can manipulate everybody into working all of those, you're considered a good supervisor. And so what I found is you're a good staff if you can manipulate the people you work with. But if you're working with somebody and they're manipulative in any way, then they're labeled this bad thing that we have to get rid of. They're manipulative. And to me, they're just trying to get their needs met. And they're doing the same thing that you're being reinforced and praised for and all that. You're manipulating them. So again, anytime a staff person says to me they're manipulative, then I really dig down hard with them and try to explore exactly what that means. And so what are they manipulating for? Because they're not getting it. So maybe you need to give it to them. Why do they have to go through that to get that? Maybe there's a better way they can do that, and we can give them that way. I really got keyed into this idea that all we're doing is trying to manipulate people and control people, and it just doesn't feel good to me. It doesn't feel good at all. Now, people will tell me, "But how about reinforcement, Ed?" In my company, we allow the only reinforcement that could appear in any plan is like verbal praise. That's a natural thing. Tell people to do a good job or whatever. We don't allow any kind of tangible or any other kind of reinforcements. Our staff know that. We have 15 people that work in our company. They all know that. And I look at just about every plan, or my partner does. And when we see it, we call them up and ask, "What's a different way we could get to the same result? How can we do this differently?" And we found that we don't have to use that. And I will tell you, we've had some very difficult folks that with behavior that's just really challenging, and that the system has said, do whatever you can. And we haven't had to use reinforcements. And I'm talking people who've been on national TV. Their case has been on national TV. Number of people with $1 million settlements as a result of just mistreatment and all that. So anyhow, we tried to figure out other ways of doing it, but we don't really like to control people. I'm already told that one. So as I started thinking about that, I started thinking about control and was I really making people have better lives? Because that's what it should be about. And what I found was I was making staff have better lives. I was making the people around them have better lives, maybe, but I wasn't making the person. So there was a guy that was in a typical vocational workshop. By the way, I haven't been in one for years. I don't do any work in any of those. It's probably been 10 years since I've even been in one. But in those early days, I was asked to do what we were often asked, is to increase on task in seat behavior. get the person doing their job and make them sit there while they're doing their job. And I used to do this and I was pretty good at it. I could probably get people to do that for a while. And one day I realized this is really boring work and they don't want to be doing it. Some people do, and they're not having problems. Some people think this is a crock. They don't want to do it. So what am I do? Whose life am I making better? The people around them who don't have to keep running after them and prompting them and all that stuff. Their life was better when I can get this in-seat behavior, but not the person. And so I started realizing that a lot of times the things we're doing, it's a question I always ask. If I do this procedure, whose life am I really making better? And if it doesn't include the person, then I got to relook at it again. It's got to include the person. Whatever I do, it's got to make their life better as well as the people around them. I think that's fine to make their life better too, because it's all about, we're all in a relationship. So, let me see, I'm just looking at my time. All right. I'm gonna skip through some of this stuff, I think. Sorry. When I prepare, I probably prepared 4 hours of material and not having it ever tested it out. You're just going to see me skipping through some things or going quickly. A little bit about power control. It's like this cartoon. So this is there's the doctor on the couch. So when did I realize I was a control freak, doc? So if you can understand and get that, right? That's the psychiatrist. That's the guy almost playing the role of it, or definitely playing the role of psychiatrist. So this control stuff looms big in the systems that I work in. And so what I found is hard to see this as a rope they're holding on. They're all pulling on ropes. And so what I found is when I get into control battles, which I try not to do with the people I'm supporting, is it's like being on this little island. And when that rope breaks, the sharks and the alligators are waiting. Nobody wins, right? When that rope breaks, none of us are going to survive. We're all going to be hurt. And I started realizing that relationships aren't about control and aren't about one person or group having control over other person. It's about how do we do this together. So relationships to me are just kind of a process of social negotiation. I'm negotiating with the person. How do we exist in this same spot right now? I want to exist in this spot with you and not have you hit me. And you want to exist in this spot with me and not have me say something horrible to you or boss you around or nag you about something or whatever. It's like, well, so how do we negotiate that? So I try to approach that kind of negotiating with people, and I've learned a lot, which I'll talk a little bit about, things that I learned along the way. The problem is great ideas, in fact small ideas, alter the power balance in relationships. That's why when you bring these great or small ideas to other people, they very often in systems will resist those ideas because the power balance is now changing. When I make any suggestions to somebody and it's not behavior modification, they don't like it because they want me to come in and fix people, and that's not what I'm about. And so very often it's a rebalancing of power. And I told this story to Yeiter. I'll tell it to you guys how I rebalanced power and changed the nature of relationships. I was working with these young guys. They were teens, early teens, taken out of their homes for neglect. They all had intellectual disabilities. Pretty much all their parents had drug and alcohol involvement. Most of them had moved around different places, left alone, all that kind of stuff. Well, these guys used to break windows in the house all the time. And there were 4, 5 of them living in this house. And I just went in one day and I was just watching and I started noticing a bunch of stuff going on. And one of the things I noticed is that the people who work with them were big guys, because sometimes they would get into restraints and all that kind of stuff. And they were just big guys that played football, college football, those kind of guys, just big rough guys. They weren't nurturing at all. And it was pretty obvious. Just think about it. A kid who's been, basically neglected by their family, shuttled around, they crave nurturing and they got zero from these big guys. There was a woman who worked, only one who worked there, and she was very nurturing and she never had a problem with these guys. So, when you see stuff like that, you go like, I wonder why she's not having a problem. And then if you start looking for those things and it becomes apparent. One of the things that I often do in a residential setting, especially, is I'll say, who has the most trouble with this person and who has the least? Great to find out who has the least. And I'll go like, oh, what is it about that person's approach? What is it about their personality that's working? Because there's a lot of answers there. And then when I see who's having the most problem, what is it that they're doing in the relationship that makes the relationship so bad? Can I figure that out? Because that's going to tell me what not to do. So I always look at both ends of the spectrum and try to figure out, what to do, what not to do, because I think both the things are important. So these kids are breaking windows. And one of the things I noticed is that the staff wouldn't let them clean up the windows, because if they cut themselves, that isn't going to look good. It's going to, why did you let them do that? So the staff had to clean it up, and it was a mess. Every window they broke was a mess, and they were breaking at least one every week for a couple months. And then the staff would grumble and mumble about all the paperwork they had to fill out, incident reports. Then somebody would come around and talk to them, and these kids could hear what was going on, and it really made their life miserable. And I figured out that they weren't, the relationship between them and the kids wasn't nurturing, and that's what the kids really wanted, but they had no control over it. And the only way they could control or get back at, especially some of the meaner staff, was to break windows. It was a great way to get back at people. So I figured, how about if I gave them power, but in a really constructive way? And so the way I did it was, I took a Monopoly. Monopoly has this one card in it that says "Get out of jail free" card, and using my scanner and white out, because I didn't. This is way before I could do cool things on my computer. I turned it into "Get out of chore free" card. And the idea was, I said, when you do chores, you're going to get these cards for every couple chores. And I didn't really use it as a reward. I just said, you're just going to get them. Every time you do a couple chores, make sure you ask for a card. So they would ask for a card. I said, now you can take that card and you can make any staff you want do any chore you want. So you don't like doing the bathrooms? No problem. Give it to John. He's going to do the bathrooms. Don't like doing dishes? Guess what? Bob's going to have to do it. So the staff looked at me like I was crazy. And sure enough, the kids started doing it. And there were two staff that were particularly not nurturing, and they were getting it all the time. These kids were doing extra chores just to get the cards, because now they had power. And literally, as soon as we started it, no more windows broken, stopped it completely, because now they had power in a healthy way. I figured out something which I consider very ordinary is, us having power. I just gave it to them. And one of the staff who was being dumped on came to me and he said, I can't take it, man. I'm not getting anything else done. I'm doing chores the whole shift when I'm here. He said, but what do I do? And I said, I'd suck up to kids and be about as nice as you can be. I'd talk to them. I'd spend time, play some video games with them, go out and shoot some basketball with them. That's what I would do if I were you, which they did. So their behavior changed. The kids were able to change their behavior. And we didn't have to stop this idea that I had to do that. The kids just stopped asking for the cards. They didn't need to anymore because the people around them were being nurturing and paying attention and giving them what they need. So I didn't even need to do anything. I didn't need to stop it. Nothing. It just ran itself. It ran its course. The kids got what they need. The staff got what they needed. They needed a kick in the pants to act more nurturing, which they were, and they realized it. We had some conversations around that when this whole experiment was over. And the experiment lasted probably about 4 weeks, 4 to 6 weeks. So So just something as ordinary as being able to give somebody a little bit of power is really helpful. And just something as ordinary as being nurturing. I didn't need anything fancy. And yeah, a little creativity, but it was nothing. There was no there's no fancy descriptions. People say, "Oh, well, you were really using reinforcement. And you didn't know it." And I'm like, I can see why you would think that, but that's not what was going on. That definitely isn't what's going on. There's something else happening here. The same kids would also they were messing up the rooms and doing some stuff sometime. I did a number of cool things with them. One of the things that I realized was they had been to so many foster homes. They just thought this was another one, stay out for half a year and leave. But this was one that they could stay till they were like 21. So they were in their teens. So conceivably, some of them could be there 7 or 8 years. And I was doing stenciling at the time in my house, learned how to do stenciling on the walls. And so I decided that maybe they would like some stenciling on their walls. And I'd ask each kid, would you be interested in it? And one guy liked footballs, one guy liked rocket ships. And I found stencils. And then I came in one day and I showed them how to do it. We did it together. We stenciled their walls. Immediately things improved. They felt like the house was their house now. Because, why would I let them put stuff on the wall if they're going to be leaving in a couple months? And again, just something that helped calm them down, and they felt a sense of permanency. So kids need permanency. They felt it. Something as ordinary as just doing stencils on a wall. They didn't teach me that in school. They didn't teach me any. I didn't go to any training where I learned that. I just kind of used what was ordinary, what seemed to make sense. I love stenciling. Maybe they would love it on their walls, and indeed they did. Herb Lovett said, the danger of thinking behaviorally about people is that we focus on the behavior of others and not our own. That was also gave me a way to say it that I wasn't able to say it before. I was thinking kind of that, but I wasn't able to say that. And so then it got me thinking about the plans that I were writing. People, I put my goals, so-and-so will decrease, I don't know, incidents of hitting to 0 incidents in a year, whatever the kind of goals I was writing. And I realized that I wasn't writing the plans for them. I was writing plans to the caretakers, to the staff, sometimes the parents, whatever, because they would read it and I was asking them to change their behavior. And so it occurred to me that behavior plans are not written for the person. It's written for the support people. That's who I'm asking to change. If they change their behavior like these big football players did, then the other person will come around because you're giving them what they need. And so in my plans, I haven't seen anybody else do this, and I've seen lots of work that people have done. I have goals for staff. So I have, I have to put, I'm required by regulation to put, Joe will decrease incidents of property destruction. But then I have these staff goals, so-and-so will understand maybe symptoms of mental illness, or so-and-so will understand, Joe's needs better, whatever it is. It's different. And so I have these goals for the staff, which always blows their mind. And I tell them, this plan is written to change. I'm going to change your behavior. And it's not because what you're doing is necessarily bad. And it's maybe not even wrong. It's just that we need to do something different. We need to figure out, is there something different we can do? Because I don't want to say you're doing the wrong thing. I just want to say, let's try something different. And maybe we can get a different outcome, maybe a better outcome for everybody. And then I started asking, well, what else I can do, and then started looking at all the ordinary things. And if you think about it, each of us brings something to this relationship that we get into with people. I bring resources. I bring money sometimes where I can take people out for coffee. They don't have enough money. Just doing that. I have a guy I take out for coffee once a month. That's a resource that I have. I'm bringing that to our relationship, and then we can talk. Or I have an interest in music, so bringing my interest in music to people. I love gardening. I've helped more than a few people start gardens. And again, it should help them have a fuller life. And then when they're happier with a fuller life, they're not having all the problems that they typically have. So just kind of figuring out what is it that you can bring to the relationship. One of the consultants that works for us is really into aromas and essential oils, and so she often will bring in stuff for people to smell. And people having trouble sleeping, well, why don't you put a couple dots of this lavender or whatever, have some chamomile tea. So people, whatever their interests are, they bring. We have people interested in athletics, and we'll encourage people and play ball with people or throw some frisbee and try to get people to be more active. All these things help, because in the end, that we need to listen to what people need, right? And so there's different ways of listening, whether it's with your ears or with your eyes. There's lots of things that are listening that you can do that I find is just really helpful. In fact, just regular old listening for nothing but the sake of paying attention to people is important. I'm not to toot my own horn or to humble brag, but I am loved by a number of the people that I see because I'm willing to sit down and listen to them. And sometimes for some people, especially in the beginning when I first start seeing them, I'm the only person who will sit down and listen to them. No matter what they say, it doesn't matter to me. No matter what they want to talk about, no matter what their dreams are. You want to be a brain surgeon? Okay. Well, we have to learn how to read first. So let's do that if we want to do that, whatever they want to tell me about, I'm there to listen. So something, again, and that doesn't get any more ordinary than that, just sitting down and listening without interrupting, without offering any kind of solution, just listening to people. It goes really far. Listening and being interested in what people are interested in. So this guy, Elijah, was supposed to go see him, and he had an intellectual disability. He was also in a sex offenders program, and he had mental illness. So he had a lot of things going against him, and he's very quiet. He would talk, but not a whole lot. He wasn't that interested in communicating with people. And I was always interested in, him. And I was seeing one of his roommates, and they said, "Would you like to work with him?" I'm like, "Yeah, it'd be great." And they said to me, "Yeah, but he won't talk to you. Guarantee he won't talk to you. Number one, he doesn't know you, and number two, he doesn't tend to talk to us that much." I said, "Well, what's he like? What's he like to do?" And they told me a couple things, and one of them that he likes is gospel music. Well, I like music. I don't know much about gospel. So I went, introduced myself, and we were just sitting there in silence, which is fine with me. Even though I like to talk a lot, I can actually shut up sometimes. So he ended up, we were just sitting there for about 10 minutes, and I said to him, "Elijah, I heard you like gospel music." And he said, "Yeah." I said, you got some tapes or CDs?" And he goes, "Yeah." I said, "I don't know anything about gospel music. If I were to listen to gospel music," I said, "who would I listen to first? Who do you like?" And he told me, and I'm like, "Do you have any of that?" He goes, "Yeah." I said, "Do you think you could play it for me?" And that was the beginning of the relationship. Every time I would come, and he'd look out for me. He'd say, "Oh, there's the music guy." And that's all it took. Being literally listening to music with him, but I was listening to what he was interested in, pushing what I was interested in. I told him I'm a musician and here's the kind of stuff I like. But I really just listened to him. And so was just really surprised again that ordinary listening just opened up the floodgates for him. It's amazing. Somebody else that I just started working with lives at home. She has Down syndrome, just graduated from high school a couple of years ago. Really talkative, friendly, sweet person, and not exactly the most talkative, especially when her parents are around because they do the talking for her, which we're going to be working on a little bit. And I just said to the parents, I said, "Yeah, I think I just want to spend some time with her." And they had some games. I said, "Let's play a game, just you and me." And so we played a game. And as we're playing the game, I'm just talking to her the whole time. It's an easy game and you didn't have to pay a lot of attention. And I'm just talking, we're just talking about things and I ask her a few questions. She answers, we do a couple more moves, a couple more. Well, by the end of I was there a little more than an hour. She's telling me about being irritable when she has her period. She's telling me like all these things. And that was only like the third time I had been there. The first two times I had spent with her and her family. This third time with just her. And again, it just has to do with listening, and in this case, doing something that she liked. So the listening was happening, doing something she liked. So again, just pretty ordinary stuff, playing a game. Again, I was never taught any of that stuff, but thought that it was a pretty good lesson for me. Let's see here. Let me just go on to this next thing. And I am going to cut short and just give you 5 more minutes.
All good, Ed. Keep going.
Okay. So the other thing that I learned, that when you listen to somebody, what it denotes is respect for them. So think about any of your relationships. When you're in a relationship, there has to be some aspect of respect, for the person and to the person. And so a lot of what I try to do is show the respect. I show it by listening. I show it by taking even their most outlandish plans seriously, because even the most outlandish plans you can work on. There's some ways that you can move toward it, as long as it's not dangerous or whatever. So just showing respect for people's ideas, for what they hope to accomplish, I just think is really, really important. Because when people feel like that, I feel you don't respect me, then it just becomes problematic, and then the relationship just isn't going to work. I don't care how much technical ABA stuff you want to do, behavior mod, even counseling. If there's no mutual respect, then it's going to be tough to make things happen. I just thought this is a funny cartoon. That's why I put it. So that's Bernie Mac. He said, "So you sit there and you just told me everybody's personal business, and now you ask me how I'm doing? Hell, I'm fabulous. And yourself?" And
sorry, continue.
So, yeah. So I just kind of wanted to end with just one more kind of thing to think about, is that I try to keep things private and do things in private, and I try to talk to people in private. And one of the techniques I try to teach the caregivers and supporters and stuff is to talk to people in private. Don't talk to them in front of, don't reprimand somebody in front of or try to solve something in front of their roommate or in front of some stranger on the street. Do it in private, just like we would. I mean, if I had a supervisor and they laid me out in front of the entire staff, I'd be pretty upset. So, but anyhow, and I just wanted to show you something real quick, just because I never did this on Zoom. So let me just, I'm going to stop sharing. And, a lot of times just listening to people, what I found is that things don't always appear, as they might. So I have to sometimes really listen hard to what they're saying and what they're doing and how they're living their life. So see if you can see this. This is a book that I have. Can you see what that is? What does that look like to you?
You can all go on unmute and
Yeah, you can unmute and see. Did you see what that? Can you see what that is? What is that? Can you? I don't know if you can see the pictures good enough. You might want to pin me maybe and make me bigger.
Looks like a sketchbook.
Yeah, a sketchbook. So that's what it appears, right? But maybe you weren't looking closely. Were you? Did you see all that?
No.
You didn't see that. That's because you weren't looking close enough. So a lot of times things aren't really, what they are. Now, for those who are really looking close, here's what you really saw. And I'll end with that. If I could do that, not in person.
Thank you so much, Ed. That was so so great. It was, so
Well,
much
thank
to
you.
reflect
Thank you.
on. So much to reflect on. And I'll just open the book club, open it to the book club members. Yeiter, maybe you have something you want to ask or comment on, and
Well,
anyone can just jump in
I-
and ask anything.
I had something that I wanted to ask.
Sure,
'Cause
Ed,
I
go
like to
ahead.
listen. Yeah, and I was just wondering if you guys could think of a time when you just did something really ordinary and it worked or it really helped somebody. I'd be really interested in hearing your stories about something just ordinary that you did that wasn't the typical, stuff that we've been taught by professionals and all that.
I'm happy to share something very ordinary that I did with my daughter, and that was actually just to give her my time, because often we get thrown into doing therapy with them all the time, because most therapy stuff are parent-led and all that. But I realized that at times they just want you to be their parent and just to be there for them. And that's probably the most ordinary of things they want. And I realized not everything is about, teaching my daughter to do things in a particular way. It's about actually spending quality time with her and just actually not even thinking about that as spending quality time, but just doing that. So yeah, definitely. Anyone else who want to jump in? Yes, Betty.
I'm really excited that someone else uses the balance of power thing. I thought I was the only one that ever said that.
Oh,
So
great,
anyway,
great.
yeah, my son is nonverbal autistic, and so he gets directed a lot, and we try not to do that so much. So my husband and I, at night, he gets to direct us. So he physically moves us around the house and puts us in a spot and tells us to stay there, goes and gets the other one, moves to another spot, and we have to do what he says. And it's so much fun. We laugh and have a great time.
Oh, that's fantastic. I love that. That's great. I'm going to steal that from you. I'm sure I'll meet somebody that will profit from that. That's great. Great.
I just remembered what you from what you said, Betty. The same happens in our household at night. My daughter said me she likes to like have this set time that she goes to sleep. So she actually gets the whole household ready for it. So she puts the chairs up for our little automatic vacuum that goes around. So she puts the chairs up and she does all that. And then she switches off all the lights. So we're like, okay, yep. So she's the timekeeper and the putting the household to sleep person. So we are so glad she's on that time, because we are very, we stick to that. And yeah, so much of that power balance coming there. Yeah.
One of the things that strikes me, Ed, is that, given the whole ABA thing, and that it's so drilled into us that by just doing things like Betty was saying, or, I mean, I did something like that when I was asked to cover with a young lady whose mother had just been there, and the lady refused to go to work that day to the sheltered workshop. And the staff wasn't showing up. And so I got asked to go over there and be with Anne. And her mother told her basically she had to stay in a recliner chair for the whole day and not move out of it, and then left. And so I'm there with this woman, and I said, so what do you want to do, Anne? And she basically started giving me orders. She told me to, like with Betty, she told me to go, and eventually she told me to go into her bedroom, which got a little bit scary, but she came in and this was after probably a half an hour of her telling me to do different things, said, why don't we go to the kitchen and get a drink, and when I've told that story, people a lot of times will look at me like I begin to think like I did something really bad, like I did something really wrong. That was so perverted what you did, Yeiter. And yet it was just simply giving her some control over me for just, a half an hour, and it changed things between us to basically have a wonderful, fun day together despite her mother, which, anyway, that's another story, but I feel like almost the dynamics of ABA almost play into that, right? In terms of
Yeah.
keeping us in that sort of mental state of, controlling people. Yeah. But
and
excellent
you get
examples.
Yeah, and you get caught in that paradigm. So for instance, and I've
Mhm.
seen this more than one time, people that I respect that use this ABA model, there's something called the MAS, Motivation Assessment Scale, which somehow boils all of human behavior down to 4 negative motivations, sensory and, attention seeking and, escape. And actually there's a 4th, and then they added another one. I don't even know them anymore, but it's like ridiculous that human beings are much more complex than that. And so when confronted with somebody who has hallucinations, they do the motivation assessment score. And I can't tell you, I mean, I've seen this many times, is that the reason that they're having hallucinations is for attention. I don't know. It's like it just boggles my mind. They're so trapped in the paradigm. And these are good folks that come up with some good ideas, but they get trapped in a paradigm, and the paradigm has no explanation for this other stuff. And so they get trapped into them saying, yeah, that's why they're hallucinating.
Hmm.
Can I throw a question at both you, Ed and Yeiter, maybe, and
Sure.
anyone else who would like to sort of, we've been having a bit of a challenging time in the mornings to get my daughter to follow time and just get ready for school. She sits and sort of goes through something in her head that she wants to go through before she eats her yogurt, which is the first thing she does to get ready. Once she eats the yogurt, she's like on go. Then she gets doing her routine, and she's very sort of routine focused. So I wonder, is there anything that I should be looking at listening to when trying to sort of help her move through the day?
So she's dragging her heels, in other words, she's dragging her heels.
Yes, she is dragging her heels a lot. And I know
Okay.
she is not unhappy to go to school. She loves going to school. It might be that there's so many things happening at school that's maybe making her a bit anxious, but yeah. Maybe maybe something
go
to
ahead,
think
Dave.
about.
No, you go. I gotta shut the door before I say what I gotta say.
Oh, geez. Well,
I'm afraid to
two
hear.
thoughts, and you can talk to anybody in my family, my wife or my kids who own the coop. They're grown up now. Is I'm the same way. Now I can get away with it because I'm an adult. You can't get away with that as a kid, but I can get away with that. And I've always had jobs where I can get away with that. For instance, I can't get up early in the morning, so I've always had jobs where I didn't have to. Working from 4 to midnight, or jobs where I'm on flex time or whatever. So you can do that as an adult. So the thing that you're describing is me, but as an adult, I can get away with it.
Yeah.
You can't as a kid, which is unfortunate, because you have certain things. But I guess, and again, it's just all supposition. I'm trying to listen. Like, well, what's going on in her head? Is it just the flood of what has to happen before, all these different things that have to happen during the day? Is that just a flood coming in, and need somehow to filter out that flood of things, and maybe be more singularly focused? Is it, or is it something else even? Is it some anxiety thing that in my head? I don't know. Go ahead, Yeiter. What do you have to close your door, so it's going to be something
Juicy.
something juicy.
Yeah, it's
Lots of curse words.
softly. Well, we have two boys and they went through junior high school and, you know, that age is, you know, they'd be dragging their feet in the morning and the bus comes at 7:10 and we had to drive them like a quarter of a mile to the bus stop. So my wife was in charge of this because she was a stay-at-home mom and I was a working guy. And every morning she'd be sitting out in the car with Joe in the car, but Sam would be in the house dragging his feet, basically. And you know, Joe would be getting upset and Lynn would be getting really upset and honking the horn. And finally, you know, Sam would come, you know, slowly out now that he knew that the bus had already come. And Lynn would have to race in the car to catch up to the bus so that the kids could get on the bus to go to school. So I said, you know, you know, this is how marriages go sometimes. I said, so why don't you try something different? And she said, why don't you try something different? You know, and so I said, okay. So you know, and this isn't the only solution. I'm not, you know, like this was just an experiment. I thought I gotta change it up. We gotta do something different here. So I dilly-dallied, you know, I dragged my feet. And the kids would be like seeing me in my office, like in you know, busy with on a phone call or something. And they're like, hey, Dad, you know, we got to go to school because Mom's not going to drive us. And I'm like, I'll be right there, just a few minutes. And it only took like one morning when they missed the bus. And the next day they're like, you know, I said, okay, well, you know, if you want to get the bus, I'll get you there on time. And it was just that it sort of goes back to what, well, Betty and Ed were sharing the power that which is really an extraordinary. I mean, I think Ed's in particular very inspired in this way. I was very taken with some of his stories and examples of just changing things in a very ordinary sense and not getting caught up in, you know, all the professional, well, the garbage that we've been sold that, you know, like you're reinforcing, you know, somebody by giving them what they want, you know, it's just crazy what we've done. But anyway, that's my
I
confession.
think part of it, you described the routine as starting when she eats the yogurt, then the routine starts. But
Yeah.
for her, it seems like the routine starts with these other things and that happen before the yogurt. And so maybe if it's like viewing those things as part of that going, I say this as
Definitely,
a
yeah.
person myself who I was never very good at sleeping at the times other people were sleeping. And so, and I was always, so was self-sufficient and would just chit chat with myself or whatever. And then, you know, boredom would set in. So I started like, I'd organize things in my room, but I've never been described as a cheerful morning person. And so then I figured out, oh, first I was getting my clothes ready. It'd be like 2 a.m. and I'd be getting outfits ready. And this was in about first grade. And then I discovered, oh, if I put these clothes on now, then when my mom's like, come on, you know, then I would know like, oh, I can lay here for, you know, like 12 more minutes. And that went on for a while. And then one day my mom's like, how come your clothes look all rumpled? And I, you know, proud of my problem solving techniques, I was like, oh, maybe because I was sleeping in them. And then she's like, what do you can't sleep in your clothes? And I'm like, well, I don't have anything to do at night. So I've just been getting ready when I'm awake. That way I can sleep when I'm tired. And,
Makes sense to me.
and
Makes sense.
yes, and I've always done things that make very good sense. And my mom was not proud of me looking rumpled, but she understood like, well, okay, you know, but
I'm glad your
so
mom listened.
sometimes leaning into, oh yeah, we've got her trained real well. Sometimes leaning into the thing, you know, is helpful.
Hmm.
You know,
I could say.
even Herb Lovett, who inspired both Ed and I, would always show up to do a workshop or a training in rumpled clothing. So, you know, you would just maybe you're in the wrong millennia or something, I don't know, you know.
Maybe her,
Well,
maybe,
You
Same
got
maybe her.
he
that
might have.
problem.
Same with John O'Brien. He always has that rumpled
Yeah.
shirt, you know, and
Great, yeah, great minds.
yeah, yeah.
Karen, I
I
think
have
you
one
had your-
small idea.
Yep.
So it depends on what the trigger is here, though. So for my son, who is also bipolar, so he's up anywhere from 2 a.m., like he's up for the day, to very, very rarely he sleeps in. Like 8 a.m. is a late sleeping for him. Anyway, but what we started doing because when he gets up, he wants to come see me, and he usually wants me to do something. So to buy some time, we put his fruit out in the kitchen in the morning on a plate for him, so he sometimes can go down. So, but every once in a while, when he's in a depressive cycle, he's hard to get up. Normally he's up. So what I do then sometimes is to sort of kickstart the process is I take the fruit up to him and put it beside him on the bed. And he always manages to eats his fruit and then he's awake. Whereas if I didn't do that, I'd be like he'd be clinging onto the bed and I'd be trying to get him to get up. So I don't know, I find some I bring the stage of the next stage to him rather than waiting to get down. So I don't know, depending on how your yogurt thing goes, like maybe sometimes just bringing if it's a catalyst, then you bring the catalyst to where they are, and that might move things along.
Hmm.
And it's also, I mean, I guess the thing to look at, you can look at, body language and things like that. The fact that that you have the yogurt and then all of a sudden they get this energy and I'm able to do that, that other part, wonder what's going on in her mind.
Wow.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Or, wonder what's happening there that has to happen before I have my yogurt.
Yeah.
And then maybe if you could figure out a different way that maybe those things have to happen. I don't know. Is there certain routines before the yogurt that have to happen? Or is it just...
She'll get up, she'll go to the toilet and come get her, she's got some sensory toys that she wants every day. So she looks at the box that's there and checks whether it's there. And then she goes and sits down and she sort of, I think, prepares herself, I guess, for the day, maybe to I think that's the case. So I definitely know she needs that time and we try to give her that, but it's like the morning, obviously we have to leave home at a certain time to get to school at a certain time.
Yeah.
So I don't have any control over changing that time. So
Well, can't you just get up? Can she get up earlier?
that's what we've done. We've sort of got her to get up earlier. If you want this time, you'll have to do a bit of sacrificing on the sleep side as well. So, and
So
then
is it,
enough time.
does she know how to tell time?
I know she know how to tell time, like look at the clock and says the time, but whether she knows the idea of how time works and, I think we need to do a bit more work on that.
Yeah, I would just
'Cause,
be
like,
thinking in terms of, well, go ahead, Ed.
No, go ahead, Yeiter.
Well, yeah,
ahead.
so
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
it would just be, I mean, I think one of the things that I do a lot is, first of all, try to think of all the things that I think I should do and then rule all those things out, because I know that that's coming from all my conditioning growing up with behavior crap. And then, so this is a process that, Ed and I were sort of talking about on a Zoom last week, and then start sort of experimenting with these ideas around control and like does she, the more control she has over, like the kids had control over me in a sense, saying like, Dad, you got to get out in the car and drive us to school, versus me telling them, hey, you need to get out in the car and I drive it, so it's just that playing with that. Yeah, and being just sort of fun and silly about it and don't make a huge deal of it. It's just like, I like the word ordinary that Ed brings to it. And, just sort of play around with it and not expect that things are going to work out. Like what I did, I didn't think, I wasn't sure if the kids were going to, get out, come after me, and they might have just sat in their room all day and, my wife would have, had something to beat me up about, but, you know, it worked and, yeah. So
No, I
I
think-
just think,
I
But I
think,
was
Ed?
also, yeah, I was also thinking though about, she may be like me. I don't have any concept of the passage of time. I was just talking there that unless I looked at something, I had no idea how long I was going.
Yeah.
You could have stopped me after 10 minutes and I couldn't tell you if it was 10 minutes or 30 minutes or 45. I
Yeah.
just don't,
Yeah.
it doesn't register. So I'm late a lot for things. And I mean, even, you know, the classic story is all my family in the van waiting for me. We're going on a trip and I got to get something out and do something in the house. And I go in and I come out an hour later, they're all reading books and stuff because I just, where you been? I'm like, I don't know. It's like, I just don't know. But so the thing that, you know, that helps me and also empowers me a little bit is, you know, if I wake up in the morning, I can hit my buzzer and go to sleep for 5 minutes. That's me doing it. And also I can look at the clock. You know, if I remember to look at the clock, I know where I'm at. If I need to get ready for something, you know, then I know exactly what time it is. And I'm wondering if she would need, if something like that would be useful for her, or if there's some way to figure out where she, you know, can have control over that, but somehow there would be benchmarks in, you know, knowing that certain things, I'm going to try to get certain things done by a certain time, whether that would help or, you know, I don't know, you know, or using an alarm clock, or even the clock thing where I can turn it off and then 10 minutes later it goes off again. So I know, geez, I'm behind or whatever, maybe something like that, or yeah, just something like that. And perhaps, or even something where she could come and somehow involve you in that routine. So, you know, so if the routine is, I don't know, I get my toothbrush, maybe she comes and gets you and then you brush your teeth together or something like
Yeah.
that, maybe, you know what I mean? Like somehow involve you in it, but
Yeah, we will work on some of those aspects. I think there's lots to
Yeah.
sort of look at, sort of really look at the routine, as most of you were sort of saying.
yeah.
You know, sometimes we think that's where the routine start, but as Catherine said, the routine might have started, you know, way back.
Right.
You know. So yeah, definitely. And I definitely know she needs that time. So we've been really trying to honor that time with her. And I'm really trying to give that control to her. But it's that balance between us getting to school on time. And also there's the consequence of the other two siblings getting to school as well. So thank you so much. Those are great ideas. And yeah. Anyone else want to have a little go? We've got a few more minutes, I think. Oh, actually 1 more minute until we finish. Anyone else has something? A comment maybe, or?
You must have something to say, Naomi. You look like you're pregnant with something to say.
Well, I just wanted to say some other people who aren't classified as having a disability need time to get functioning in the morning. So what you're doing may be the answer to it. She has time to do what she wants before she gets structured.
Definitely, yep.
Yeah.
Definitely take that on board. And I know, like, for me, I wake up and I can go like that, but for my husband, Setni's dad, he needs time. He needs half an hour to 40 minutes sometimes to wake up. So he takes that time. And I've decided now I'm gonna let that go, because sometimes I'm like, oh, why he's not doing these things. But now I understand that he needs that time. So Setni's probably like him.
Is there a genetic component?
Yes. Definitely.
Well, and the thing is that the other thing I meant to say is that it sort of, the kids would get my wife's goat, so to speak, you know, like she would get really upset and my other son would get really upset, and like that fueled this emotional,
Yeah.
you know, drama, if you would. And I wasn't going to play into it, and it was fine with me if they got to school late, actually, because I hate school, actually. So
I would I would
So-
be fine with it too, but only problem is I know Setmi actually has trouble when she gets to school later. She actually has trouble then regulating for the classes, which the school
Ah.
said when she comes late and
Okay.
she misses certain things, she gets upset. So it's
Okay.
great if you can come on, a particular time.
Yeah,
And this was
that's a-
when I was getting late to get things organized. Now it's the other way around.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Yaita, do you want to wrap things up or?
sure. I mean, I just mainly want to thank you, Ed, for a relatively short notice, and having
No
any
problem.
idea what you'd be walking into with this gang. I'm so glad you were able to do this, because I think it adds, I mean, I think there's other people out there that have some interesting ideas around this, and I mean, I think all of us should be sort of in search of, just expanding our knowledge base with people like Ed and anybody else we can rope into this, and so, yeah, I think it's, we're sort of like a liberation front, for
Resistance group.
people with disabilities that are getting pushed around, so and it's really it's actually quite tragic and sad sometimes, people breaking windows and and you got people saying, well, they're just doing that to get attention and all this sort of crazy stuff, and you're going to get into trouble if you're a staff person like Ed or I, in the situations, people are going to question you and wonder, what the hell are you doing? This is sort of weird, or you're perverted, or something. But anyway, I admired Ed's courage in some of the stories that he shared with me, as well as I think he reminds me a lot of, I mean, Herb, not to compare them, but I mean, Herb's wit, and I think Herb was a magician too, wasn't he? Was Herb into magic? Ed?
I don't know. He might have been.
I think
I'm into it big time,
seems
but
to me, I think I have a vague memory of that. Anyway, he was always entertaining and very lively, and just
Mhm.
cut things down to ordinary language. Like, it's like, geez, what, I should have known that. I should have thought of that. And why didn't I? And it's clear that we've been so conditioned to think otherwise. The power balance is, I'm in charge and you do what I tell you to do. That's how things work. Yeah. So do you have any last words, Ed? Do you want to?
I'll show you a last cartoon. I think, Naomi, you were saying something about you like the positivity of the group. So I said,
Yes.
I know I have some cartoons, so this isn't quite about being positive, but maybe
Oh,
in a way
cool.
it is. So I'm just gonna show this to you. Ready?
You'll have to share screen and yep.
There you go. Wait a minute, let me bring that up so you can see it. There you go.
Yeah.
That's for you, Naomi.
Thank you.
We're talking and I dug that out from my file.
Yeah. Nice.
Thank you
I
so
have
much.
one I'm gonna try to find and send you, and it said, your attitude test came in, they're negative, or something like that, or
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
I'll try to find it.
that's great. Yep.
Yeah, and I guess the only time you don't want a positive is when you're doing a COVID test. So
That's right.
but yeah, this has been a wonderful session. I hope everyone here enjoyed it, and thank you so much, Ed, and thank you so much, Yaita.
Thanks.
too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thanks for
Yeah.
inviting me. It's good meeting everybody. So
Yeah.
Yeah,
I had hoped.
Thank
I
you
hope
for
to
your
get to
time. It was
Australia one
very
day.
interesting.
Thank you. I hope to get to Australia one day, but I can't take that much time in a plane.
Yaita keeps telling us this too. We need to convince him way
Yeah,
more.
I can't. Yeah, I can't do it.
No.
I fell off my garage roof onto my back and broke my tailbone, and
Oh,
I just can't. It took me 6 years to do a sit up and not hurt. So I can make it about 8 hours. So I can get to Europe, but I can't get to Australia. I wish I could.
Somewhere in the middle, we might be able to meet. Yeah, that's right.
Oh, that's a
Catherine.
good idea, right?
Yeah, maybe something to aspire for is to meet face to face as the book club somewhere. I don't
Yeah,
know
wouldn't that
where,
be
but
cool?
maybe somewhere. Yeah. But thank
Yeah.
you so much. I'm conscious of the time because all of you have spent a lot of time to get here. And thank you so much, Yeiter, to
Yeah,
starting
thank
this
you all.
book
Yeah.
club and keeping it going. I'm hoping we can meet in a month's time on that'll be 25th September or 24th September or something like that.
Yeah.
I'll send an
And-
email and
20,
then
21.
Yeiter, we can talk more about it.
Yeah.
But Ed, thank you so much. And I really love the fact that you were saying about making mistakes and learning from them, but also having that humility to go back to the family and say, you know, I've made this mistake and I'm sorry for it. And I think that gives so much power back to them as well,
Yeah.
and help
Yep.
them in their wounding process. So thank you so much for being such a wonderful human being. And Yeiter too, I know you've gone and said that, and I'm doing that as well. Whenever I do something wrong with my kids, I've learned I have to apologize and be the big person and set that example to them that, you know, not that apology is going to take away all that, but it's the starting point. So
It's what-
yeah.
How you teach, yeah.
On
Role
that
model.
point, I'd like to end
So,
this. Oh, sorry,
Yeah,
sorry.
thank you
Yeiter.
all. We'll
Yeah,
see you in
thank-
a month, everybody. Thank you.
Thank
See you,
you.
everybody.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you, Arosha.
No
Awesome.
problem.
It's fun.